Summer 2024 is halfway done, and I've finally been able to catch up on this season's gargantuan amount of anime coming out. What I have noticed is that the predominant amount of the anime are comedy series, and they are probably the best shows of this season. Despite having returning shows such as Tower of God and Oshinoko, it may seem like there are very few shows that have seemed to break the mold. I'm here to dispel those rumors and actually highlight some of the shows that I've liked for the season. So without further ado, let's talk about some of the highlights in an otherwise uneventful season. No Longer Allowed in Another World is an isekai fantasy show that begs the question, what would happen if someone who wanted to die was isekai'd? Our main character is Osamu Dazai, of the same name of the Japanese writer who famously tried to kill himself 5 times and ultimately did on that 5th time. His most popular work, No Longer Human, obviously has inspired the title, No Longer Allowed in Another World. And his whole thing about trying to commit double game end with someone is because he actually did attempt it with someone, a bar hostess called Shimiko Tanabe, although he survived that double game end while she did not. It is chock full of dark humor that pokes fun at the genre and is another one of those meta comedy shows that I've come to enjoy. It follows the author Osamu Dazai, who's reincarnated from the 20th century and is extremely cynical about life. I think I gravitate towards this character because of how grim he finds everything to be, and the only reason he keeps going is the chance to be reunited with his significant other in which he did a dual game end in Minecraft with. I would compare this show to one such as Konosuba, but elevate the dark humor to a 10. This is an isekai comedy that will tickle your funny bone and has a decent enough story to boot. I really liked your boy Kan Ming, and so shows like this that take historical figures and put them into fantasy settings are always going to be something I enjoy. It also has the OP main character trope, but they have a different power that we've yet to see in isekai, so it's actually pretty fresh. And while the show may not stick out to you immediately, there are a lot of good moral messages sprinkled throughout the humor to make the watch feel worth your while. If you're looking for an isekai this season, this is the one that I recommend the most, as it's probably the best one of the season. On the topic of fantasy shows, Wistoria 1 and Sword is everything that I've wanted from a dungeon crawler show. Will Surfort makes a promise to his childhood friend that he will become one of the strongest magicians in the world. Ironically enough, he lacks the capacity to use any common spells. It bears a lot of similarities with Mashle, but instead of this being a satire of the isekai genre or Harry Potter, this is a deeply grounded fantasy show that asks the viewer if they'd be willing to push their body to the limits to achieve their dreams. Will is a likable main character and perhaps my favorite protagonist from the season, as they have a high drive motor that keeps them working hard to stay in the magical academy. The way he does this is by slaying dungeon monsters in order to earn credits that are supplementary results for his failing grades as a magician. At first glance, Wistoria looks like a bland fantasy show, but its animation and setting make it stick out amongst the past fantasy series that have come out in the past 6 months. If the first 6 episodes are any indication of how good this series will be, we're in for a great run that will keep us engaged throughout the entirety of the season. Suicide Squad Isekai is a forgettable show for those who aren't isekai or DC fans, but being both of these things, I'm in love with it. I think the premise of Amanda Waller setting the Suicide Squad into an isekai world is just hilarious. I think that the premise is funny, so I'm gonna get into the show. The core cast consists of Harley, Clayface, King Shark, Peacemaker, and Deadshot. As a DC fan and someone who's loved the direction in which James Gunn is taking the new DC universe, this series feels like an extension of the wacky universe that we'll be getting in the near future, especially with series such as Creature Commandos on the horizon. Amanda Waller does the same thing that she does in literally every iteration of the Suicide Squad, by planting bombs inside the necks of the supervillains that she is going to have work for her. The mission she gives the Suicide Squad is to essentially explore this isekai world so that they can take whatever resources they can from it. This plot reeks of letting freedom ring, and I gotta say I love it in a fictional setting. There's meta humor and fan service that I just seem to enjoy, and I have to say that I don't really mind the fight scenes either, but it's not the best. The major gripe that I do have is that Clayface looks like Michael Jackson. It really feels like they could have done anything with his character design, but it's vastly underwhelming and I can't look at him without seeing Muzan or Michael Jackson. I also just love seeing Harley kick someone square in the balls. If you're a DC and anime fan, this show will give you a good laugh. Studio Wit is doing a really good job with it, and I would love to see a second season. The viral marketing and love for the show really made it stick out, but what piqued my interest was the fact that the original source voice actor for Hatsune Miku plays Shikonokonoko. I love Megumi Han's work as Kana Arima in Oshinoko, so I actually stuck it out with this show for that reason. Her delivery shines through, and I genuinely believe it's some of her best work. Megumi Han's comedic timing is on point, and as far as absurdist comedies goes, I actually quite enjoy this one. I'm usually not someone who likes these kinds of shows, but I found myself laughing through the entirety of it. Again, this is in part due to Megumi Han's timing. On top of that, this is another Studio Wit production. You can really see that in the vivid animation style. If you want to watch cute girls doing cute things and a comedy show that is similar to Josh and Dropkick, this is the show for you this season. If you're someone who spends $50 on VTuber Super Chats, then VTuber Legend is definitely something for you. As a content creator who is friends with countless VTuber friends, this show just resonates with me. It shows how Yuki Tanaka blows up online after forgetting to end her stream and commentating on other VTubers in his sphere in a crude manner. I feel like if there's anything that we're going to remember this season for, it's all these amazing comedy shows, and VTuber Legends is definitely one of them. I do fear that this one will be swept under the rug due to how many quality comedy series there are this summer and just because of the premise. Not a lot of people are into VTubers. Speaking of quality comedy series, Plus Sized Elf is definitely not that. It is, however, full of plot. The most underrated comedy series that I've watched in the past 2 years returns with a second season, though, The Cafe's Terrace and Its Goddesses. This is an ecchi series with a lot of charm. While season 2 is still airing, you can catch up on season 1 by binging it. This is a hidden gem show that's criminally underrated. After Hayato's grandmother passes away, he returns from Tokyo to run the cafe she used to own. There is a dilemma though, as Hayato's grandmother actually had 5 women living with her after Hayato had went to Tokyo. Now that Hayato has returned, he's trying to kick out the 5 girls, but then realizes that he wants to actually reopen the cafe that his grandmother used to own. The show is about recapturing old memories, lives, and it's just really underrated. I would highly recommend the show. A show that I was recommended by friends, a lot of them honestly, was Pseudo Harem, and I ended up watching it this past week after really relenting. And all I can say is, it's peak fiction. This is the next evolution of harem anime, taking 100 girlfriends and mashing it together with My Dress-Up Darling. Our female protagonist, Rin, uses her acting skills to morph into any of the respective deres and tropes within anime. It is shows like Pseudo Harem that raise the bar consistently for the genre, making it so the generic, trope-filled series die in obscurity, or so I hope. A show that I hope will die in obscurity, but I know won't, is Days with My Stepsister. This show is just a hub search result, and I have to say that I'm not shocked that we got it. After going through the entire domestic girlfriend phase and reading that roller coaster that is a manga, this show seems very tame in comparison. Joking aside though, I will concede that this is actually a serious romantic drama. The concept is just very jarring when you first hear about it. I was not expecting to get as invested as I did, and jokes aside, Days with My Stepsister deserves a watch. When Nagatoro came out, I knew that there would be a wave of these kinds of shows. Dare I say that Nagatoro is the sword art line of this subgenre of romance. Alya sometimes hides her feelings in Russian is exactly what it sounds like. It's essentially Nagatoro if they spoke in a DVD endgame lobby. This series doesn't really blow me out of the water, I'm just kind of curious to see where the subgenre goes from here. The Elusive Samurai is a historical fiction series centered around a Tokiyuki Hojo, a samurai of the same name in real life. This is an action-adventure that focuses on Tokiyuki trying to restore the power of the Kamakura shogunate. It is a revenge story at its core, so that appeals a lot to me. Tokiyuki essentially needs to avenge his family after someone does a hostile takeover and seizes power. This is my favorite new action show of the season, and I give this the siren seal of approval. The Elusive Samurai is just something that I found really gripping, and I think that everyone who wants a seinen show is going to kind of gravitate towards this. Again, I'm a sucker for historical fiction stuff, so this is just going to get me invested really quickly. But something that I just really enjoy as well is that the animation is that something in a different style. Like the art style is different from your typical anime, from that 2D kind of plastic look. And especially the fight scenes. I'm sorry, but the fight scenes might be better than Demon Slayer. I will kind of go and die on that hill and say that right now. And I know Demon Slayer fans won't like that, but just look at this piece of animation and tell me that I'm wrong. To me, it's more fluid, it has more color, and I think it's just using the shading and kind of lack of color to make it look really good. Like, this is like an art person's fucking wet dream. So I'm definitely going to recommend the Elusive Samurai, especially if you're someone who likes historical fiction, or if you just like samurai. This is just amazing. Something I cannot believe I watched multiple episodes of, though, was Failure Frame. This is just a rewritten version of Ari Fuerza that is somehow worse than Ari Fuerza. On top of the atrocious plot, the animation cuts in and out of 3D CGI, and I would honestly rather pour bleach all over my body through a saw trap shower than watch any more of the show. The same can be said about the strongest magician in the Demon Lord's army. It's just a worse version of Help. How can you look at these CGI renders and not get taken out of the show? Both of these shows do not deserve your time, but Isekai trash enjoyers, these are things for you. Imagine getting the courage as a woman to confess your feelings to the person you're infatuated with, only to find out that the woman you are crushing over is in fact a cross-dressing boy. They then start to have a nosebleed as if to say that they're into this, like a fetish? I don't know. Instead of feeling dejected, Saki states that she'll make him love her. This is the concept for Senpai Is An Otokonoko, and this is one of my favorite shows of the season. It's a serious romantic dramedy that talks about gender dysphoria and trying to find oneself, and is genuinely just thought-provoking. For any people looking for a good LGBTQIA+ inclusive show this season, Senpai Is An Otokonoko is full of a lot of promise. In terms of investment, I think that Senpai Is An Otokonoko has my full attention. I truly think that this is a wonderful anime, and I think that people should really get to look at it because it has a lot of important messages that have to be asked. Especially as LGBTQIA+ lives are being redefined in America right now, I think that having some autonomy and seeing how LGBTQIA+ youth goes through these things in a fictional setting is important. It's okay to have the ha-has and the funnies, you know, but this show's actually serious, and I think it's better for it. That's not to say there's not humor in it as well, but I think it's really grounded and tries to ask the question of how do you become your own person and find your gender identity while you have authority figures telling you you can't do that and you can't do this. 2.5 Dimensional Seduction is essentially an ecchi version of My Dress Up Darling, with 2D obsessed Okamura making an anime club by himself. He then becomes the photographer for the girls who end up joining the club, and he gets to live out his 2D fantasies as a result. Hey, if you can't beat him, join him. I know I'm gonna get flamed for this, but 2.5 Dimensional Seduction is actually a better version of My Dress Up Darling for me. I think that the premise is more grounded, and I think that it's another believable kind of dynamic, while also being a comedy. It has a lot of very serious notes to it. I think that if you go into the show expecting it just to be about comedy, you'll be blindsided by the drama and how serious it is, but I think that's also a good thing because it tries to do a teeter-totter of both. I think that it's just an amazing show, and I think that it teeter-totters both of that drama and that comedy really well. So I think if you go in it for the comedy, you're gonna be blindsided by the serious notes, and I think that's okay. I wouldn't say this is my favorite series right now, but I think by the end of the season, as it becomes a complete show, it will become one of my top 3. I don't have much to say about Soshimin How to Become Ordinary because I don't really like these kind of awkward romantic comedy shows. It's just one of these shows where it's trying to say, hey, you could become part of the normal people, and I just don't really like that kind of premise. But it is a good mystery show, so if you like that, that is something to it. Essentially, they're trying to assimilate into this real world and kind of get through the mysterious incidents that keep happening around them. So I think that it's just, I don't know, it's not very interesting to me, but it is something there. The only isekai trash that I would recommend is the Ossan Newbie Adventure, because this is just something that I've been watching, and it is kind of my isekai trash slot for this season. The Ossan Newbie Adventure is essentially just your OP main character, but he doesn't know that he's an OP main character. If you don't like this kind of comedy, you're not going to get into it. It's not going to have that same pitfall as Failure Frame, though, with 3D CGI being very glaring, so I think that's why I'm more used to accepting this. But essentially, this guy's like One Punch Man, but he doesn't think he's One Punch Man, and yeah, it's one of those OP main character tropes. Atri, My Dear Moments is a sci-fi romantic comedy that's actually really solid. In a world where rising sea levels has kind of put most of the world underwater, you can kind of see where this is going. And it's about this boy trying to be able to find his love and rationalize how he could love a robot girl. I would say this is definitely a good show, but not one for me. And then I'm just going to go through all of these really bad isekai shows that have been coming out. I'm just going to show them on screen right now. You'll see a couple coming right here, like A Nobody's Way to an Expansion Hero, and then A Journey Through Another World, raising kids while blah blah blah, you know, it's just I would actually like to see studios taking more chances instead of doing just the same old isekai bullshit, but again, I'm someone who consumes isekai, so I'm a hypocrite in this standpoint. I like when it's good isekai. I don't like it when it's bad isekai. I don't think that's a stretch to say, honestly. So honestly, I just really want to see some good isekai or just none at all. Please, I'm sick and tired of like the smartphone isekai shows that keep coming out. And I know that's a nitpick, but I'm just stating it for the obvious. Twilight Out of Focus is our boys' love story for this season. So this is essentially these two guys acting to be gay for this film because they're making a boys' love movie for their student club. It's a typical kind of fashion of trying to find love when you don't expect to find love, and I kind of like that. For BL fans, this is going to be their show for the season, and I think that's pretty solid. I think it's good. I don't think it's anything to write home about, but it's definitely there. I don't know what it was about human-robot relations that happened this season, but there's not one, but two shows, because Atri My Dear Moments is that first one, and then My Wife Has No Emotion is the second. In this world, human-robot relationships aren't exactly frowned upon, but they're not exactly normal either. So this is a kind of romantic comedy that's setting up that kind of standard. It's not the greatest thing, but it is a decent watch. I wouldn't say it's not worth your time, but I wouldn't say it's the fucking masterpiece that people are saying it is. It's not gonna blow you out of the water. It's just a simple romantic comedy. I think that you can watch it and enjoy it, but it's not something to write home about. When I saw the title Love is Indivisible by Twins, I think you immediately knew what I was thinking.
Wow, that's actually pretty spicy. Wow, that's very spicy.
But this didn't end up being a Kiss X Sis situation. It ended up being something more wholesome, but not really, because they're still two sisters that are trying to go after the same guy. So I don't know. I don't think I exactly like this show, but it is something. And by something, I mean, you could definitely watch this and enjoy this, but for me, it's not something I'm gonna go out of my way to watch. Again, there's an unprecedented amount of romantic comedies this season, and I think that Love is Indivisible by Twins is gonna get washed away by a lot better shows. The same could be said about Dahlia In Bloom, but I actually will concur that I think it's actually a good isekai and people just aren't getting into it. Dahlia is reborn into a world of magic, your typical isekai stuff, and is engaged to her father's apprentice. It's kind of trying to find how you love someone that you're engaged to and you're not exactly supposed to love, but is done for the sake of living a happy life. And by happy life, I mean when marriages weren't exactly for romance, when they were actually for financial gain, or stability, or power dynamics, or whatever you want to say. Parry Everything is a show made by someone who ended up playing way too much Elden Ring. It's a generic fantasy show with an OP main character. It's pretty standard stuff. What isn't standard is Makeine, too many losing heroines. This is a romantic comedy with such a fresh concept. What happens when all the popular girls end up getting friend-zoned and rejected by the ones they want to date? Kazuhiko is now caught in the middle of everything and has to try and help them find happiness. This is the opposite of 100 Girlfriends, with Kazuhiko having to become the world's greatest wingman. There are two wolves in romantic comedy anime right now, Rentaro being the anime's Barney Stinson and Kazuhiko being anime's Ted Mosby. The animation for Makeine really sticks out. It's something that really contrasts heavily with all the other art styles out there today. I really love the shading and finite strokes in it. It really makes me think about new age Ghibli films, as the production quality is really impressive. There isn't another show that I look forward to more than this one, and I got hooked after the first episode, so I have to say this is something that is going to be peak. Mayonaka Punch is essentially Oji-san in another world, but more focused on the content creation aspect of it. Even though it seems like a rehash, I actually love the character designs a lot and got suckered into the concept. This is another hidden gem that I think should be given a chance. Nothing is more underappreciated than Delico's Nursery though. It is a mystery show while also trying to show how vampires would go about doing childcare. It's just so bizarre, but I found myself enamored with vampire aristocrats trying to take care of children. Anything gothic of this nature sticks out to me, and I'm so glad that I saw the trailer for the show. If there's anything that I will recommend for mystery and horror lovers this season, it is Delico's Nursery, as it really does shine. Those are all the shows that I really highlighted and wanted to talk about though. If there's anything else that you want to see me talk about or just think I missed, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm sorry for the long hiatus, I am back now, and I'm going to be trying to push 2 videos a week. We'll see what happens here. This has been Siren Zen, aka Siren, signing out.